Hey guys, Clef here. So we're doing something a little different. I was inspired by Russ from Retro Gamecore from doing something that is outside of my comfort zone. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. Usually I script my reviews, I prepare my things. My thoughts are the same, but I try to put, a carefully crafted amass of words for you to consume as a piece of content. But now I want to do things a little different and go just more like my OTC videos, but for what I consider to be my mainstream review videos, which you may have seen some of. So I'm Clef, this is gametechtalk, and what I do here is talk about tech that is specifically tied to gaming. I want to help you find hardware that you might be interested in, but understand why it might not be for you or why it might be, and help you discover products or better ways to experience the games. We only have so much time in a day. In my mind, I like to experience these amazing crafted pieces of art that are video games in ways that helps me connect more with the development, with the artists. And so that is the goal with this channel. This device that we'll review today, the Razer Kishi Ultra, I bought with my own money. One thing about the box, so you have all the information here and there. I don't know if it's just me, but I find saying that it is the god tier of mobile gaming a little bit obnoxious, but hey, whatever. It is what it is. Razer will Razer, as I like to say. They go by the beat of their own drums, very much so. In the box, of course, you have the controller, which we'll see in a second, but other than that, you have this little slide explaining what the controller is. And one thing to note that is important is definitely these little slides. You can change them on the controller, I'll show you in a second, to install your phone. So here we have the controller itself, and we'll have a little bit of a comparison, probably the most popular controller in the mobile space, the Backbone. Now, in terms of versus the Backbone, it is, I'd say, a completely different DNA controller. This is way more pocketable. This is way more slim. For those reasons, it is not my favorite. I will say that for the longest time, it was the best mobile controller on the market, and it is still, by any standards, a great one. It introduced a lot of people to the possibility of gaming on their phones. And when comparing to this controller, it's nice, but here you have smaller sticks. So yeah, just versus the Backbone, a great controller, but I'd say definitely for sure that one is superior. Kishi V1 was also very interesting. One, because it had a very different concept with the snapback here, and you could just put your phone in like, oh, I'm sorry, it's got to be those stub nubs. They sting. This is the Android version, but you also had the iPhone version. And overall, a great controller. It had larger sticks than what you have on the Backbone, so for that reason, it definitely was superior. That's what the sticks look like on this one. It was a great controller, not perfect. Probably the biggest downside with it was that it was wobbly on your phone. Controller that I never reviewed on my channel, but is actually really, really good, is the Moga XP7 Pro, if I recall. I'll probably put it up there somewhere, the actual name. It operates with battery. Any of the controllers you'll see other than this one does not have a battery. It's all connected through USB-C or Lightning port. This one operated through Bluetooth, so you kind of had that trade-off with latency for certain games and apps. As far as the comfort, the ergonomics, it's a great product, and it also has one of the probably most unique features I've seen in a mobile controller. It has wireless charging capabilities. So when you sit your phone in there, it can actually charge your phone. And for that, it has this very unique aspect to it, which I find is quite interesting. Overall, a great product. I don't know that it was that successful. I don't know that a lot of people know about it. I wish it stretched further, because that would be an amazing controller for tablets. Unfortunately, it is not the case. Probably the main contender, and the only one that could arguably be superior to the one we'll be covering today, the Razer Kishi Ultra, is the Gamester Galileo G8. So there's a lot to love about this one, and I will say right off the bat, there are reasons why you'd want to have this rather than having the Kishi Ultra, and rest assured that we'll go through these reasons why on this video. But yes, the Galileo G8 is a phenomenal controller, and it is, at least in the market as it is right now, the only other controller that can keep up with the Kishi Ultra. Now, arguably, it's the other way around because that one came first, that one came second. But yes, you know, in my opinion, it's the only controller that can compete with it. Go over the features. First is you have USB-C at the bottom. You also have a 3.5 millimeter jack, which supports headsets. There's no battery, right? So this is all wired. The USB-C port, by the way, this is something that is unique to this controller and the Backbone, although Backbone puts that behind a paywall technically. I mean, does it really work like that? I don't know, but that's what they do. You can plug a wire into your computer or other compatible devices and use that as a controller. Yes, it is a telescopic controller, but you can also use it as a wired controller on other devices. That is an advantage that this one has over the Galileo G8. Claire from the future here, just to address something, the games for Galileo G8, you can actually use it on a PC, but you have to go through this connector. So essentially you need to have a USB-C female cable to, you know, male USB-C or USB-A. But the Razer Kishi Ultra, you can actually go from the USB-C that is right under there on the Kishi, you know, the actual connector where you pass through your charging, is also able to carry the game inputs. And that's where it is a big difference. Just for the record, I will draw a lot of comparisons to the Galileo G because it is a great controller and definitely the main contender. You have mechanical buttons, so they're not tactile, they're actually mechanical. I do believe the shoulders are tactile. You have gradual triggers, so you know, like your throttle and brake for racing games. You do have 2 programmable buttons. Select start, you have a screenshot capture button, the Nexus app button. You have a D-pad, which I think can be changed. I probably have my mind twisted with the upcoming Absolute one that I'm super excited about. Now, another feature that is extremely uncommon in the mobile space is that this one has tactile feedback, right? So it can rumble, it can vibrate. Man, I almost forgot in comparisons. We also have the Razer Kishi V2. I thought the buttons felt cheap. I thought the controller felt cheap overall. The triggers were too slim. I was not a fan of that. In the small form factor, I'd go Backbone over this one. Some people like it. The haptics, although the feature was there, it wasn't all that good, to be honest. But we'll get back to that on the Ultra. So sorry for that. So back to the Ultra. Now, this one has haptics as well, of course. I have to say, from what little I tested of it when it comes to haptics, it is much, much, much better on this controller. When it comes to rumble on Android or iPhone, actually, it's a little bit better on iOS, I find. But not so much the rumble experience, but just the rumble compatibility. As funny as this may sound, iOS had rumble support way before Google. In fact, Google had rumble support very recently. It's originally when Razer introduced it. I think it was their own API that they injected into their software, which meant that the compatibility was extremely slim. So you basically had little to no haptics experience on the V2 Pro, whereas this one can really tap into the fact that since Android 12, Google's API officially supports Rumble. So while you will still not have a lot of Rumble experience on Android devices at the time being, you will see it more and more as the time goes by. And then there's always a reality that sometimes the haptics will come from your phone because the game was developed in a way that they use the haptics of the phone, in which case you would feel it on your controller a little bit as well. So the takeaway is this one does have Rumble embedded in the controller, much like the Absolute A1 that is upcoming. Right, so in terms of compatibility, you can use that on any iPhone 15s that has a USB-C. Razer did pay the MFI tax, so this is officially supported on Apple devices. You can also use it on an iPad mini. It stretches enough for that. Unfortunately, I don't have any iPad mini to test it, but you know, it's been tested by, I believe, Stubbs from Metro Handhelds. Now, of course, it is compatible with Android, but it is also compatible with Windows if you use the USB-C out to plug it into your PC, as we mentioned earlier. I'll put everything relating to size and weight on screen. If that's important to you, you'll have the information. And last but not least, Razer have their own software to pair with this controller, and in fact any other controllers before it, but the Kishi V1 had a different software. If I recall, the Kishi V2 Pro and Kishi Ultra used the Razer Nexus. Quite frankly, it was decent to begin with. It's gotten a lot better. I actually like the software. So let's move to the next part of this review, the feel of the controller. And this is definitely one of the strong aspects of this one. I have to say, the moment I took it out of the box, I wasn't too sure initially. But the more you hold it, there's you can tell that it's quality. So I'll give it that. In my opinion, it's way too expensive, but we'll get back to that. But when it comes to quality, it does feel good. And as much as I appreciate and I love the Galileo G8, it also does feel better. So I can at least give it that. Like in terms of the plastic, one thing that they have done, much like the Galileo G8, is you have a different sensory experience throughout the entire body, which is something I do appreciate. So the back is more dotted. The front of the grips are just a little softer than the top layer, and they do sound a little different. So yeah, overall, I like the feel. The buttons are glossy. The D-pad is also a little different when it comes to the actual textures. It is subtle. I would say that the Galileo G8 might have gone for differences that are a little more drastic. But as far as the actual feel, it is different throughout the entire device, which is something that I appreciate. I do find that the sensory, the touch, the feel of a controller does help when it comes to split seconds reactions, just because your mind kind of creates those patterns or those things that you expect and that you use without thinking. So to me, it's kind of the same, and I just feel like it's a better experience overall. The feel is really good. The ergonomics, they really nailed it. I mean, you have, much like the Galileo G8, you really have a living room controller kind of experience, which is something I greatly like. The triggers are a little bit on the slim side, but I don't mind that if they're like elongated, I think is the word, which is definitely the case here. If you look at them, they're quite long, so your fingers can sort of rest like this. And in my opinion, it's an amazing way to trigger them, to actionate them. I do like that the extra buttons are a little bit lifted. They're very easy to access, very easy to use. The shoulders are okay. One thing I don't like is when you have a portion of the button that doesn't click as well. And definitely the very inner portion of the buttons don't click as well as the external portion. Now, chances are you wouldn't necessarily click the button from that area, but if you were to go from one to another fast and you want to sort of keep your fingers on all three at the same time, I would assume that your fingers will rest more on the inner parts of the button. So you would want to actuate with the third phalange or second, not the first, because otherwise I feel like you're not gonna get reliable clicks as if you click on the edges. The other buttons on the controller feel great. I'm super happy with them. One thing that Razer does that I don't believe I've seen other controllers do, which is sometimes I wonder if people realize, if companies realize and they don't copycat it. Because if there's one thing that, if I was making my own controller, I would want to copycat from Razer, and it's such a basic feature. You could easily not think about this feature being one. I don't even know if Razer lists it as a feature, but you have those little holes here. This is an escape for the sound to come out, because some of those phones have the speakers next to the camera bump or the camera hole in the front, but some of them do have it on the edges, and those little holes are a great place, a great positioning for just about any phone to have the sound escape and go up. And it was the same with the Kishi V2, if I recall. Yes, not the, oh, actually, the Kishi V1 only had it on where you plug your phone, which arguably is where the speakers more often than not are. But this one has it on both sides. And this is a very small detail that is easy to forget, but one that I think is intentional, and I also believe is a great idea. If we get back to the features real quick, I mentioned the slides earlier. Now, one thing is, I can use this with a case on, as long as you remove the slide here, at least in my case, when using my Fold. But depending on the phone that you have and the thickness of the case that you have, you may want to use different ones. And so Razer supplies you with 3 different models. For example, this is B, and they give you one for the left and one for the right side. So you have both sides if you want to change them. And essentially the difference is the thickness of that little part right there. And yeah, depending on what your phone is, you have different ones to increase your compatibility. But also, and one thing I greatly appreciate, you can just remove it altogether, and this way you're pretty much guaranteed that your phone will fit. So as you can see here, I'm able to put my phone in with the case on, and the other side. That side doesn't go in as well. But if I wanted, much like what I was saying, I can just remove the insert right here, and now I can just slide it in a little bit better, like so. I have to say, when it comes to using it with the fold, as much as I love the Galileo G8, but I do think that the Kishi Ultra does a better job for the fold, just overall. First, you still have the ability to bend your phone a little bit. So, you know, if you're doing like DS and you want to use like the top side and bottom side, you can still do that to some extent. You cannot go any further. I'd say using it closed on a fold phone, I prefer the Galileo G8, but opened, I do like the space, the extra space that you have there, while still keeping something to hold, to have a tight hold on your phone. Unfortunately, I don't have an iPhone 15 anymore, so I can't test that, but I do have a Red Magic phone, and you see this one also has a little case of a wolf, nice wolf, my spirit animal, I think, I don't know, I'm not sure, I think. I'm able to slide it in, no problems. You can see here that the RGBs are lit up, and that looks great. That actually looks awesome. It looks great with the Razer Edge as well. I just don't have it with me. It's right all the way over there, and I'm not gonna get it because it's not worth it. Overall, I find the feel of the controller to actually be really good. It does have a nice little bit of heft as well, which is something I like. I think it is a successful product from Razer. The buttons feel awesome, much better than the Kishi V2, and so does the sticks. We no longer have those small sticks. Now we have proper, you know, large sticks, and we also have a concave. I always forget which is which, concave or convex. I'm pretty sure it's concave because there's a cave, so it sinks in, I think. Man, trying to remember maths. Whew. Let's just say concave for now, but I'll show you a screenshot of what I mean. That one. So that's how the sticks are made. It is almost a necessity to go with these types of sticks for that reason. You know, it just gives you that feel that the surface that you have is wider and that you can rest your thumbs better on it. When talking about compatibility, anything that can support a controller on iOS and on Android will basically work. It is X input, so by being X input, it's pretty much widely adopted on Android, on phones and tablets, and same goes on iOS. Now, if you were to try this on an Android TV or a Chromecast with Android or Google TV, whatever it's called, that may not work because I do believe that there are some compatibility issues with X input on those specific devices. But on PC, on Mac OS, on a Steam Deck, on an Android phone, on an iOS phone, X input is supported pretty much everywhere. So all of those devices, although they're not all listed as compatibility, they should all work just fine. Now, you won't necessarily have the software everywhere. But back to what we were saying with compatibility, when it comes to just using that controller on all the different devices I named, there is one wall that you will hit, which is exclusively on Android phones, and it is with the official Sony Remote Play app. Now, the GameSir Galileo G8 is well able to play your native Remote Play app because it spoofs as a DualShock 4 controller. Now, this one, on the other hand, because again, spoofing is sort of questionable, it doesn't do that. So for you to be able to play your PS5 or PS4 Remote Play, it is possible, but you're gonna have to get external tools like PS Play or Replay, which are great apps, works phenomenal, and arguably better than the official one, which is, you know, funny to say, but is the truth. So there are solutions to using this controller to play your PS5, but yeah, you'll have to get external tools. And I'm pretty sure, I don't think it is the case for Replay. I'm pretty sure PS Play does support haptics as well. So you're going to be able to have a rumble experience. And I have to say, when talking about the rumble, this is another aspect of this controller that I really enjoy and I'm really happy with. I wouldn't say it is as good as, say, a Joy-Con or the DualSense controller, but whatever motors they use in there feels better than what you have on living room controllers. At least I find. It feels like a middle in between. I'm really not sure. I might open it at some point. I don't know if it is a haptic motor or if it is a rotary motor at this point. I'm really confused because it does not feel quite, it doesn't have that rumble signature of rotary motors. It's closer to what you would get from a haptic unit. And I'm wondering if maybe they have something that is similar to what we find in the KK3 Max, the maglev motor. That's what it felt closest to in terms of rumble. I don't know if it has all the layering that the maglev motors have, but to me they feel similar. So maybe they have subcontracted goalie kit or another company to get different motors. But yes, this is something, if you know the answer, let me know in the comment box, because it definitely feels different than a rotary motor. Everything else on the controller is great. The D-pad is also tactile, and that D-pad is awesome. Like, if there is one thing that I could fault the Galileo G8 for, like properly fault it for, was its D-pad. I was not a big fan of it. In my review, I said that I wish it had rumble, but I was okay with it not having it at the time. Now, with Absolute coming with a controller that does have it, I hope that GameSir is already in the works on a different controller, but we'll see that in the future. But when it comes to the D-pad, this is by far, like by a mile, the absolute best telescopic controller D-pad I've ever experienced. If you are a big retro gamer, if you like to play your games with the D-pad, this is, like, bars none, the best D-pad I've experienced on a mobile telescopic controller. That D-pad is so good that it rivals some of the best D-pads on controllers, like proper living room style controllers. Like the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra that I reviewed a few weeks ago has probably the best D-pad I've ever experienced, and I would say that this one is an extremely close second. Extremely close. In fact, I would think that with more time using this D-pad, I will probably favor it over any other D-pad, because what I like is it retains the traditional cross, which for fighting games is extremely efficient to have and better overall, but it does that while having such an easy glide motion. It's really, really, really good. I'm really happy with that D-pad. It's probably like the strongest aspect of this controller. All in all, there's a lot that is strong on that controller, which brings me to the recommended. Would I recommend it? Yes, for everything that it has, for everything that it does, it is a phenomenal controller. It's really good. The ergonomics are great. There are a few things I wish was different. I wish it had a pivot USB-C like it does on the GameSir Galileo G8. You know, I find that when you're inserting or removing your phone or tablet and that you don't feel any play in the USB-C, it kind of makes me uneasy. I feel like I'm about to break the thing. But, you know, I would assume that the build quality of Razer is robust. But yeah, it's one thing I wish it had if I was to give it a con. Overall, it's an extremely well-built controller. But there is a second con, and that con is the price. It is extremely expensive, and Razer are in a position which I hope will end shortly with Absolute. Not that I dislike Razer or anything, but you know, I think it's great that we have options. I'm really excited to see what Absolute will bring to the market. Absolute, at this point in time, and the foreseeable future of what we know in mobile controllers, is the only product that can beat this one. Because as much as the Galileo G8, in my opinion, is a better buy, it's a better purchase for sure, I do have to agree, as much as I hate that obnoxious statement, that at least for now, it is the goddest. I'm not gonna say god tier, it is the goddest tier mobile controller, because there is really nothing quite as good. I do prefer the backboard of the GameSir Galileo G8. I like that the GameSir Galileo G8 can be modded to stretch. I haven't opened this one, but I'm pretty sure it's using ribbon cables and little metal pieces that kind of constrict back into themselves. Anyways, I'm not really good at explaining these. I know what they are, but explaining them is a different business altogether. But yes, at least in the time being, it is, I agree, it is the best controller on the market. I just can't warrant the price. That's the issue that I have with it. To think that you can have, I want to say, about as close as 90%. Like you are 90% of the way there with this one. And arguably this one has features that the other doesn't. The new iPad will work with this for sure, but you also don't have all the features. I bought it with my own money, as I mentioned earlier, so I'm debating if I'm keeping it or if I'm sending it back. Chances are I'm most likely gonna keep it because it is really, really good. I can agree to that. I can attest to that. It is really a great controller. It's just so expensive. It's hard to justify when you have a market that is so aggressive with products that are so close in quality and in features for a fraction of the price. Now, with all that said, if ever that product was to be like a 25% off, absolutely. 25, like if you see it on sale, like I would assume probably when Black Friday comes about, of course we're not there yet, but in November, if there isn't better on the market and Black Friday comes about, yes, I would totally say go for it. It is well worth the difference if you compare it to, say, a Backbone. You know, with that in mind, it's worth every penny. However, when you look at a Backbone, when you look at a Kishi V2 Pro, Kishi V2, these ones, they're often on sale. Same goes for the Galileo G8. So on top of being less expensive, but getting you very close to what this provides, they do have sales. I don't think we'll see sales, at least for a few months, on this one. And so that is it, guys. A great product. Should you get it? Absolutely. If, you know, it doesn't hurt the wallet, go for it. Give it a try. Maybe get it from Amazon, return it if you don't like it. But I would assume that if you are in need of a telescopic controller and you want to go for the absolute best, this will serve you right. If you are trying to do that on a budget, definitely go Galileo G8. So that is it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know how you feel about this one. I'm hoping it's not going to turn like beep, but we'll see. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.